The Retirement Cafe podcast, the psychology of exercise in retirees, with Dr. Josie Perry.
Retired or thinking about retirement? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Retirement Cafe podcast. In each episode, we bring you an important conversation with insight, tips and knowledge, all designed to help you live a fulfilling and successful life in retirement. Here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner and Accredited Later Life Advisor, Justin King.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Retirement Cafe podcast, which is kindly sponsored by My Financial Planner. Not knowing when you can afford to retire or what your pensions and investments will provide can be worrying. My Financial Planner provides independent, fixed-fee retirement planning advice, bringing clarity to your financial future. At My Financial Planner, we build a financial plan for your retirement and equip you with the knowledge to implement the plan and, if necessary, buy any products you need yourself. Find out more about getting a plan to fund the retirement that you really want at myfinancialplanner.co.uk. Today, I'm delighted to welcome to the podcast Chartered Psychologist, Dr. Josie Perry. Josie's company, Performance in Mind, works with those in sport at all levels, including Olympians and sometimes people on the stage or in high-profile jobs, to help them overcome their barriers to success so they can achieve their goals. In our conversation, Josie shares her story of how standing on the starting line of her first Ironman race, she realized that while she couldn't control the waves she was facing, in that moment, she had the power to control how she felt about them and how she approached the race. This realization led Josie to switch to studying the psychology of exercise. We discussed Josie's latest book, The Psychology of Exercise, and specifically the chapter about psychology of exercise for retirees. Josie explains why understanding how the motivations and barriers to exercise differ at different stages of our lives, and how they can help us better support people in exercise at all times of our life. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Dr. Josie Perry. Welcome to the Retirement Cafe podcast, Dr. Josie Perry.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, really looking forward to having our chat. And I know you a little bit because I know some of the work that you've done, and I follow you on Twitter that I know that you do a lot of. And I was on one of your webinars on Monday night, not that you'd know I was on it, but you were giving out lots of really, really interesting information for sport. But Josie, tell the audience who you are and what you do.
So I'm a chartered sport and exercise psychologist. So that means I work mainly with athletes, but sometimes with people on a stage, sometimes people in high-profile careers, helping them to deal with anxiety if they've got big stuff coming up that's quite scary, or just to build their confidence, or to learn some mental skills that will help them be more effective in whatever they have to do.
Wow. That sounds busy. And you're quite a keen athlete yourself, aren't you?
I do sport for fun. I wouldn't say I'm ever an athlete. But yeah, I grew up at school doing lots of things like ballet, tap, jazz was my passion then. And then I got into rowing and sailing at university. And then since leaving uni, I've been doing quite a bit of triathlon. Wow. And Ironman in Australia was your first one, I think. It was what kind of led me on the path to what I do now. So I'd done all my training for Ironman in lovely, warm, calm 20-metre swimming pools in London. And we got over to Melbourne and stood on Frankston Beach, which is where the Ironman starts. And the waves were horrific. And I was terrified. My husband, who's an Aussie, was pretty scared. And I was like, I have no idea how I'm going to get in there and swim. And they kept putting the start back and back because they were genuinely bad. And the guy in the tannoy said, look, guys, you can't control those waves. You can control how you feel about them. And for the 10 years or so that I'd been doing triathlon, I genuinely never really thought about how my mindset would impact the way I performed. And it was like a proper light bulb moment of, oh yeah, if I do this differently, if I choose not to be scared of those waves, I might be okay. And I didn't do a brilliant swim, but actually I had a great race and the fastest Ironman time to date. Wow. So it worked, and it really prompted me to think much more about the psychology of our sport, how we can change our behaviours if we go through certain processes, and sent me back to university for 2 years, another 3 years training, so that I could become a sports psych at the end of it.
Fantastic. Now, and I'm going to get to the interesting bit why I wanted to chat to you for our retirement cafe audience in a second. But just one bit of frame of reference for those who don't know. Could you tell me what an Ironman consists of?
Sure. So it's a while since I've done one, actually, but it's 3.8 kilometers of swimming. And then you grab your bike and you go off on 180 kilometers of cycling. And then you put your trainers on and you run a marathon.
Yeah. And if you're doing that swimming in tough sea swims, that's a tough gig. And I have to show a little bit of interest here, because Kathy and my wife last year in Hamburg, which is a lot flatter and a lot calmer. It was quite hot, actually. We did an Ironman ourselves. So we do appreciate the the level of effort it takes to get to even to that start line, let alone complete one. So all congratulations to you to do it in those conditions. Yeah, well done.
Yeah, I've certainly learnt a lot.
Absolutely. Now, okay, why is this of interest, of course, to our retired audience? Now, you've just written a book called The Psychology of Exercise, and you've got a specific chapter in there, haven't you, about the psychology of exercise in retirees?
Yeah, so it kind of came about for two reasons. One, I'd previously written a book for Routledge, my publishers, for athletes and for coaches on how to perform under pressure. And they came back to me and said, would you be interested? We've got a series called The Psychology of Everything, and we cover every subject under the sun and the psychology around it. And we really want a book on the psychology of exercise. Are you interested? And I wasn't sure, because I tend to spend most of my time on kind of the high performance and the sports side. But I had also done a project for a brilliant charity called Silverfit. And their focus is getting retirees more active so you can live a longer, more independent life. And part of the project I'd done for the charity was looking at how do we make exercise feel as easy as possible. How do we help people get over those barriers? How do we motivate people so that they actually want to come and join in and then feel the benefits for themselves? And so it actually felt like, because I'd really tried to grasp what was going on for the psychology of exercise in retirees, rather than most books that look at everything in general, it could be really interesting to do the psychology of exercise for very specific age groups, and see what the benefits are going to be at different times of your life, and see if there's different barriers at different times of your life or different motivators, so that we can start to shape the way we actually support people in exercise much more effectively for the stage of life that they're in.
Yeah. Now, of course, you know, as we get older, we start to have a few niggles, and we start to have a few creaks of the bones, and you know, poor backs and all types of things. So just by the very nature that most retired people are starting to get, or are continually getting older, of course, that straight away I'm imagining, you know, that's a barrier to becoming fit, and especially if maybe fitness has not been part of their life because of career, because of bringing up a family, because of the busyness of life up until that point. How do we help people through that?
What was really interesting when I started researching this area was, in my head, very simplistically, very uneducatedly, I kind of assumed that retirees had plenty of time. And I couldn't understand, with my background of always being very active, why on earth wouldn't you be doing as much exercise as possible? And it was when I started going out and interviewing retirees, lots of people didn't have lots of extra time. They might not be working, but that time had been very quickly filled up with commitments to church or volunteering or the community. Lots of people had huge caring responsibilities, either for their other halves or certainly for their grandchildren, had started to become a huge issue. And so alongside some of the other barriers we saw around cost or the environment feeling very unwelcome, not having things specifically set up for that group of people, for some of the fears around falling that people will have, and then just general inertia. And one of the really interesting barriers I found was actually family members not wanting retirees to exercise because they were worried they might get hurt, or they were worried it wouldn't be so good and that they'd actually had many years of working and now they deserved some rest. And so some people were actually having to actively fight that to be able to go out and be really active. And then when you had health issues on top, it wasn't the health issues I found that was holding people back. It was the length of time it was taking to get them fixed. Right. And some of that is that as we age, it takes us longer to recover. So injuries will be slower at healing as we're older. But it was also difficulties in getting GPs to take seriously that I need this fixed because I want to be getting back to exercise. And they were really, really having to push people to get that. And some people were quite distraught. They were kind of having 2 years out of their favourite sports because it was taking so long to get those injuries taken seriously.
Yeah, very challenging, very challenging. Now, I've interviewed, I've been lucky enough to interview numerous people and in the kind of the health sphere of retirement. And again, we get the message. And of course, it is just kind of common sense that keeping active in retirement is hugely important. And in fact, we know there's a number of studies, isn't there, from muscle wastage really starts to act on those of you who get over 50 and and the ability, and of course the ability to kind of get up and to move around and to be able to deal with falls is really, really important as we get older. So for people who haven't done a lot of exercise in their kind of working life because of how many kind of other priorities that they've got, how would you get them to approach that, or what kind of encouragement would you give people to embark on making exercise a priority as all those other things you've obviously said are a priority in their retirement?
One of the first areas I would say is actually educating yourself about the benefits. So you mentioned some there. There is a vast amount of research now coming through showing the benefits of exercising in retirement. One of the key ones, and it's one of the ones that Silverfit was so interested in, is around battling loneliness. So when we're in work every day, we have an automatic community around us. We see people when we go into the kitchen to make a cup of tea. We've got people checking how our weekend was and having a quick chat or a gossip. And you can lose that very quickly when you're outside of that regular routine. So finding ways through exercise to combat loneliness is a huge benefit for people. That then goes on to the fact you get fewer depressive symptoms because you're able to normalize some issues you're going through. You have people to talk to. You get the physical benefits of exercise, have some very mental benefits as well. So we feel a lot better. You get more structure in your day. You feel like you've got more purpose. And purpose is really important for longevity of life, for how much we feel we're having an impact on the world around us. And then you obviously get things like better fitness and better quality of life. So when you really understand those, it can give you more of that impetus to make the effort and to find the place to fit it into your life. Yeah. So education is definitely one of those top ones. Another area that's really important is actually building up that self-belief that you can do it. And if it's something you haven't done in a while, we can be very negative in our heads about, I can't do that. It's not for me. I don't feel competent to do it. But if you can have someone leading you through the process, that's really beneficial so that gradually, step by step, it feels a little bit easier. And then you get those wonderful kind of reward chemicals going off in your head and that dopamine boost of, I did that. And I can imagine at the end of your Ironman last year, that sense of achievement at what you had been able to do, that you probably still get some of that buzz a year later, that's really phenomenal.
There was a lot of relief as well.
That you're still alive. yeah.
That it's over.
Yeah. And there's some of that with our day-to-day exercise as well. Some of the training I do for a triathlon, I don't love it in the moment of doing it, but I love the feeling afterwards that I've done it. So that's a lot of it, but building slowly that self-belief that it's something I can do and it's for me. People want to know they can do it safely. And the biggest or the most popular exercise for retirees is walking.
Yeah.
That's actually harder in winter when it's colder. You're worried about ice or snow. There's more rain. It gets dark very early. There was a real call when we did a survey through Silverfit. People were really keen for much better lighting in public parks and for better toilets in parks so that you feel like you could go out for a long run, and benches. So you can go out for a long walk, but if you do need to sit down, there's somewhere you can go. If you need to go to the toilet, there is somewhere you can go. And those parts of infrastructure can make it much more welcoming.
Yeah.
And the one other area I really noticed isn't necessarily social support from trainers, exercise people, family members. It was support from peers. And when they've done research and they've trained peers to be able to engage in exercise and motivate other retirees, they tended to stick at it much longer. It was much more engaging. They wanted to be there. It became a much firmer part of their routine. Yeah.
And I think you're so right. I'm just thinking about, there are some, I mean, I probably appreciate that all exercise is kind of good exercise, but some exercise may be better than others. It's with all the areas that it can develop. So, I know that maybe this is just a reflection on me, but I know that if I go to a gym class, a spin class or something, I often won't really meet anybody, if you know what I mean. But if I go and if you go and play badminton, or there's I play hockey still, but I know that there's a walking football group in Christchurch. So there are, and I can imagine the camaraderie there and the opportunity to meet new friends, maybe table tennis groups, walking, obviously, as you say, there are specific things that will deliver on a number of levels, I suppose.
Yeah. So one of the things I love about the way the Silverfit charity works is you meet up as a group, and it might be a quite individual element you're doing. It might be Nordic walking, which you could do on your own, but you meet as a group, you go off and do your walk, and then you come back and you have a cup of tea at the cafe. And that, even the people I've interviewed that said they never did it to meet anybody else, they just wanted the exercise, actually found their kind of tribe and their gang through doing it. And that's what makes you come back. That's what means on a rainy Thursday morning, when you know you should be going out, but it looks horrific outside, and why would you? You go because you want the chat afterwards, and you go because you're going to have a great cup of tea in the cafe after you've done the hard bit. So that makes it really sticky. It makes us want to go back. So it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, of course, at the moment, it's November. I'm not sure when this is going out, but it's November time, and we are in lockdown. And I know you did a recent article in the Sunday Times, Think Like a Sporting Champion, 10 tips for boosting your mental resilience during lockdown. So this is for all of us, but what were those key tips?
Well, what's great about the tips, and I'm now frantically trying to remember them all, is
maybe it'll be the top 3 out of the top 10.
What's good about actually most of what we do in sport and exercise psychology is it transfers over to the rest of life. Yeah. So they're all really beneficial. So we started off looking at actually how to deal with anxiety, because something I noticed working with people over the first lockdown was that about every 10 days, people were having a real dip, and they couldn't necessarily put their finger on why, but it just felt really tough and much harder and much heavier than it had been before. So there are 2 techniques I like to use when we're having one of those days, or whether we're feeling anxious about other things going on. One of them is called colourful breathing. You're welcome to do it with me now if you want.
Yeah, let's do it. Cool.
So you think of 2 colours. It can be your favourite football team. They could be just 2 colours you love.
Got it.
I always go with red and blue.
Okay.
So to remember, you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And you breathe the first colour in through your nose for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold deep inside for 2 counts. And you breathe the other colour out through your mouth for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And as you do that, it slows down your breathing rate from about 20 breaths a minute if we're anxious, down to about 5 or 6. And so it slows down that whole filter in our body of being a bit wound up and a bit panicky.
Yeah, amazing.
But anytime you feel stressed, that just starts to calm us down. It's also really good if you've got insomnia, if you're struggling to sleep at night, because you focus on the colours, slows everything down, you end up drifting off.
Brilliant.
So that's a lovely one. Another one, if you find yourself getting anxious, is the rainbow technique. And you go through the colours of the rainbow in your head and you find 3 things of each colour. So it might be, start with red. It'll be a red phone box, a red London bus, a red post box. That's an easy one. And then we go to orange. And you go through each colour. And because you're focused on those things, it keeps you in the moment. So you stop worrying about what's going to happen in the future. You stop worrying about all the things we've definitely screwed up in the past and that people are judging us for and all those other thoughts we have. So those things can be really helpful. We also looked, probably the most positive feedback point that was in the Sunday Times and in the workshops was about building confidence. And I've had so many teachers email me since saying, I'm going to do this with my class because I think it's such a nice thing for them to do. But it's to get a jar and get 25 little strips of paper. And on those strips of paper, you're writing little messages to yourself, but they're coming from you and your heart, not someone else just telling you you're good. And you put things like 5 successes you've had, 5 strengths you can see in yourself, 5 things you love about yourself, 5 times you've overcome a setback that you didn't think you would be able to. Could be 5 things you're proud of, or 5 things other people have said, and other people that you respect, not just randoms, but if people you respect, what have they said about you that made you go, oh, that's really nice? And you write those down. And if you're very British and very humble, it might take you a while, but we're working towards the 25. And you put it somewhere, lots of people put it by their bed. But every time you then start to have that anxiety or that I'm not as good as I am, or I can't do this, you can look at your jar and it reminds you in your own writing that actually you've got loads of great things to celebrate and that you're a great person.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Love that idea. Love that idea. I'm going to definitely have a go at that and get my girls who are 9 and 11. That'll be fantastic for them to do as well.
It is brilliant with that age. I get sent these photos from around the world of the athletes that have done their jars, and they take them to competitions with them, and they'll send a photo of their little jar sitting on their bedside table in the hotel room. There you go. It's almost like you're plugging a little bit of extra confidence in. There you go. Yeah.
And maybe this will give the confidence for people to step outside and take on something new, maybe engage in a new sport and meet some new people and as I say, engage with charities like Silverfit, etc. Josie, it's been fantastic chatting to you today. I wish I had more time. I could chat to you for hours, but I know you're a busy lady. What would be the key message that you'd like everyone to kind of take away from our chat today?
I think, obviously, I'm biased. I think exercise is incredibly important.
Yeah.
But I don't think you should do it just to do it. Do it because you love it. So it is really important for all of those benefits we talked about to go out and do some type of exercise. But it's most important you find something you love. So if you can go out and try loads of different things until you get something that kind of gives you that twist in the tummy of, oh, I'm actually really excited to go and do more of it, and find your thing, then it's going to be much stickier. Then you're much more likely to carry on and do it, and then you get all the benefits.
Brilliant. Really wise advice. Josie, where can people find out more about you and get in contact if they need to?
So I spend far too much of my life on Twitter. So my Twitter handle is Josephine Perry. And I also have a website called performanceinmind.co.uk. And there are loads of blog posts on there. And there's lots of worksheets and lots of information people can download.
Wonderful. Well, it's fantastic chatting to you. Really, really pleased we've had this opportunity. Once again, Dr. Josephine Perry.
Thank you.
Thank you once again to Dr. Josie Perry for taking time to join me on the podcast. If you'd like to find out more about Josie's books and the work that she does at Performance in Mind, check out the show notes on our website at theretirementcafe.co.uk, where you'll find some useful links. One of those links is to podcast episode 26 with the founder of Silverfit, Edwina Brocklesby, that Josie mentioned working with in today's episode. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please do leave a review on Apple Podcasts to help more people like you to discover us. It really does help. To get in touch, please email me on hello@theretirementcafe.co.uk, or you can connect with me on Twitter at JustinKingCFB. Thank you as always to my financial planner, the Fixed Fee Retirement Planning Specialist, for sponsoring the podcast. You can find out more about how they can help bring clarity to your retirement at myfinancialplanner.co.uk. So until next time, this is Justin King helping you feel more informed in your retirement.
Thank you for listening to the Retirement Cafe podcast with Justin King. To find out more, you can find us online at theretirementcafe.co.uk.